My wife knew the schedules of her affairs better than the schedules of her flights. It wasn't just one fling. It was a system. And while I was fixing hydraulics on airplanes, she was arranging hot nights with pilots in hotel rooms across the country. And the wildest part? I didn't have a clue. Not even a hint. I thought our marriage was the kind people looked at with envy. Me, the reliable mechanic, the guy who literally kept metal birds in the air. Her, the flight attendant with the perfect smile, admired by passengers, loved by coworkers. Together, we looked untouchable. But behind that picture-perfect image was a marriage that was already rotting from the inside. The first time I felt something was off, it was almost laughably simple. One Tuesday night, she flew back from Miami. I picked her up the way I always did. Hot coffee waiting in the cup holder, her favorite playlist running, a bouquet of flowers on the seat. She kissed me like nothing was wrong, chatting the whole drive about turbulence and needy passengers in row 14. I nodded, smiled, pretended to listen. But my mind wasn't on her words. Because 3 days earlier, I'd walked into something I couldn't ignore. If you're hooked already, go ahead and hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Trust me, it only gets messier from here. Here's what happened. She forgot her charger. I, being the good husband, dropped it off at the crew lounge. That's where I saw it. Elise, my wife, leaning way too close to a pilot I'd never met before. Her hand was resting on his chest. His fingers were on her waist. It wasn't just co-workers catching up. It wasn't just a joke. It was the body language of people who had been crossing the line for a long time. I didn't confront her. Not then. I kissed her cheek, acted normal, and walked away, but inside, I felt like someone had punched me straight through the ribs. The next day, after she came home, she jumped in the shower and asked me to grab her uniform from her carry-on. I unzipped the bag. Shoes, scarf, a book, some mints, and then something that froze my blood. In the side pocket, a silky red thong, folded neatly beside a mini bottle of Jack Daniels from a hotel minibar. Here's the thing, she hates red. Always has. Never wore it for me, not even on Valentine's Day. Seeing it, there was like staring at a crime scene. That's when it clicked. This wasn't a slip-up. This wasn't a one-time oops. This was a lifestyle, a pattern. And I'd been the fool waiting at home with flowers while she played out her second life in airports and hotels. But here's what you didn't know about me. I don't explode. I don't scream. I don't break things. I fix them. I troubleshoot. I diagnose. And when I find a fault, I eliminate it at the root. That's what I do with airplanes. That's what I decided to do with my marriage. That night, while she slept peacefully beside me, I started my mission. I cloned her phone, scrolled through deleted texts, and combed her cloud backup. What I uncovered wasn't just one shady chat or one guilty picture. It was a network. The Sky Circle. That's what they called themselves. Pilots, flight attendants, even dispatchers. They had private group chats, coded language, shared calendars. They knew how to hide in plain sight. They weren't just cheating, they were organized. And my wife? Elise wasn't a bystander. She wasn't just tagging along. She was one of the main players. Photo after photo, message after message, date after date. It was all there. She'd planned whole weekends of lies. Fake delays, fake reassignments, fake last-minute crew changes. She was meticulous, precise. And all the while, she came home, curled up in my bed, and acted like the perfect wife. That's when the rage came. Not the kind that makes you yell, but the cold kind. The sharp kind. The kind that doesn't shout, it calculates. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. No, I was going to collect every scrap of evidence, study their every move, and when the time was right, I'd burn their little sky circle straight out of the sky. And trust me, revenge tastes better when it's slow brewed. After I discovered the thong and the minibar bottle, I tried to convince myself maybe there was some kind of explanation. You know how your brain does backflips when you don't want to believe the truth? I told myself, maybe it's a gift from a friend. Maybe she just tossed it in there by mistake. I was clinging to any excuse I could, because the alternative meant my whole life was a lie. But then the patterns started showing up. At first, it was the flight delays. She'd call me late at night, saying her plane was grounded or the crew got reassigned. No big deal, right? Aviation's messy, I get it. I've lived my whole career around unpredictable schedules. But when those delays lined up perfectly with hotel bookings and crew rotations, I later found at her phone. I knew. Then it was the way she came home. Sometimes too happy, sometimes too drained. And not drained in the 12 hours of turbulence way. Drained in the I've been with someone else way. She'd fallen to bed without even kissing me goodnight. And when she was in a good mood, it felt fake, like she was overcompensating. Here's the thing. When you spend your life fixing machines, you learn to notice the smallest inconsistencies. A weird sound in a jet engine. A hairline crack in a hydraulic line. The details that most people miss, but which can bring down a whole aircraft if ignored. My marriage was the same. The little cracks were everywhere, and I couldn't unsee them anymore. One Friday, she told me she had an emergency crew call to Seattle. Said she'd be back Sunday night. I kissed her goodbye, pretended to believe it, and then checked her flight log. No Seattle flights. Not for her crew. Not even for her airline. That's when the switch flipped. I realized I wasn't dealing with a simple cheater. This wasn't just my wife sneaking around when she got bored. No, this was organized. Calculated. She had a system, and I had to figure out how deep it went. So I started playing detective. The first step? Access. I already had her phone cloned, but I needed something more reliable. So I slipped a tiny recorder into her luggage. Nothing fancy, just a discreet device that picked up conversations whenever it detected sound. She carried that bag everywhere, so I knew it would catch something sooner or later. And it did. The first recording I played back made my skin crawl. Her voice. Laughter. The clinking of glasses. A man's voice, low and confident, saying, "Don't worry, babe. Your husband's probably under some plane right now. He won't know a thing." I paused the recording. My chest felt like it was caving in. I rewound. Played again. Same words. Same mocking tone. That was the moment I stopped being the victim. Because now it wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. They thought I was weak. They thought I was clueless. They thought they could laugh about me behind my back while they played out their little secret club. And I decided right then, if they wanted to play games, I'd play too. Only I'd play smarter. So I kept gathering. I pulled more audio clips. Screenshotted chats she thought were deleted. Cross-referenced flight schedules with hotel bookings. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. And every piece revealed the same ugly truth. My wife wasn't just part of the Sky Circle. She was helping run it. She coordinated hookups between other crew members. She covered for them with fake alibis. She was one of the gatekeepers, making sure the circle stayed tight and secret. The same woman who once told me she couldn't wait to start a family was out here building an entirely different kind of family, a twisted underground one. But here's what she didn't count on. Airplanes don't fly without ground crews. Without us, the ones who see every wire, every bolt, every leak, they'd never leave the runway. And I was about to be her ground crew, watching, recording, collecting every detail until I had enough to make the whole system crash. The more evidence I had, the calmer I felt, because I finally had control. She thought she was living a double life. But soon, she'd realize she wasn't the only one keeping secrets. The deeper I dug, the uglier it got. See, at first, I thought Elise was just cheating with one guy. Some pilot who got a little too smooth during a layover. Some casual fling she was too weak to resist. That's the story I wanted to believe. Because if it was just one guy, maybe I could wrap my head around it. Maybe I could even find a way to forgive her. But forgiveness doesn't exist when you realize your wife is part of an underground network. They called themselves the Sky Circle. And this wasn't just some secret group chat of coworkers messing around. No, this was organized, structured, almost like a damn club. Here's how it worked. Every member of the Sky Circle used coded language in their flight logs and chats. If someone texted extra turbulence in Denver, it didn't mean turbulence. It meant a party. If they said crew swap, it wasn't about planes, it was about swapping partners. They had their own twisted dictionary, and Elise knew it by heart. I found screenshots in her private albums. Pictures of hotel doors, drinks lined up on nightstands, blurry shots of people she thought she had hidden well enough. But I recognized faces. Pilots I'd seen in the hangar. Flight attendants I'd said hello to in the parking lot. People who smiled at me, shook my hand, thanked me for keeping their planes safe. Meanwhile, they were screwing each other behind my back, sometimes literally right after I'd fixed their damn aircraft. It made me sick, and the part that burned the most? Elise wasn't just participating. She was coordinating. Her phone was filled with threads where she played hostess. She'd tell one flight attendant which hotel to book. She'd cover for a pilot who had to explain a delay to his wife. She'd set up meetups in different cities, making sure no one overlapped with someone they shouldn't. She was a damn administrator, a ringleader. The same woman who used to text me, "I love you, can't wait to be home," was also texting pilots, "Room 419, don't be late." I'll never forget the first time I played back one of her recordings and heard her laughing with him about me. "Oh, he's clueless," she said. "He thinks I'm always exhausted from flights. Poor guy has no idea." And they all laughed. That laughter burned into me like acid. It was cruel, mocking, and it flipped something in my brain. This wasn't just cheating. This was betrayal on a level I couldn't comprehend. They weren't just using their jobs as excuses. They were weaponizing their jobs. Their schedules, their uniforms, their credibility, it all became camouflage for a hidden world of lies. And I realized something important that night. I couldn't just catch Elise. That would be too small, too easy. No, I had to expose all of them. The sky circle wasn't going to stay hidden. Not anymore. So I upgraded my strategy. I installed a tiny GPS tracker in her car, tied directly to my phone. Every time she left for a shift, I knew exactly where she was. I bought a stronger audio device with remote access, so I didn't have to wait for her bag to come home. I could stream it in real time. And I set up a hidden camera in our bedroom. Not for sex tapes, God no. For the arguments. For the phone calls. For anything she might say when she thought no one was watching. Within a week, I had more evidence than I ever thought possible. Hotel receipts, GPS trails, audio recordings of her bragging to her friends about fooling the husbands. And every time I pressed play, every time I looked at another screenshot, the same thought pulsed through my head like jet fuel through an engine. I'm going to bury the sky circle. But I also knew I had to be careful. If I confronted her too soon, she'd cover her tracks. If I went to HR at her airline, they'd sweep it under the rug. No company wanted a scandal about its crew members turning layovers into sex parties. So I decided to play the long game. I'd gather evidence, build a case, and then, when the moment was perfect, I'd take it not just to her, but to everyone who needed to know. Husbands, wives, families, employers. No screaming match. No dramatic fight in the kitchen. Just cold, calculated exposure. That was the plan. And Elise. Poor Elise had no idea that every smile, every kiss, every "I love you" was being shadowed by me silently collecting the rope she'd eventually hang herself with. The deeper I went, the more twisted it became. What started as a suspicion had now turned into a full-blown operation. My operation. By this point, I had recordings, GPS trails, secret screenshots, and even coded messages I was slowly starting to crack. But I knew if I wanted to take down the sky circle, I couldn't just rely on what I had at home. I needed bigger eyes, wider access. And in the world of airports, there's only one group that sees more than anyone else. Security. Now, I didn't want to drag anyone innocent into my mess, but I had a friend, Mark. He was an airport security officer I'd known for years. We'd shared beers after long shifts, swapped stories about crazy passengers, even covered for each other when one of us needed an extra break. If there was anyone I could trust with a secret, it was him. One late evening, after my shift, I asked him to grab a drink. We sat in the dim light of a rundown bar, just outside the airport. He could tell something was eating me alive before I even opened my mouth. "What's up, man?" he asked. "You look like you've been run over by a damn jet." I took a deep breath. "It's Elise." His face went stiff. Everyone knew her. Everyone liked her. To them, she was the golden girl of the flight crew. "What about her?" he asked carefully. "She's cheating," I said. "And it's not just her. There's a whole group. They call themselves the Sky Circle. It's organized. They use layovers to—" I stopped, my throat tightening. "To screw around. With each other. With whoever." He leaned back, processing. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." I showed him a couple of the messages. A blurred screenshot of her group chat. An audio clip of a pilot mocking me. His eyes widened. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. "I've heard rumors, but damn." That was all I needed. From that point on, Mark became my silent ally. He had access to surveillance logs, camera footage, entry and exit records, things the average person could never touch. And with his help, I started piecing together even more of their web. I saw timestamps of Elise entering hotels with crew members captured on lobby cameras. I saw her swiping her badge at times she claimed to be sleeping on layover. I saw pilots sneaking into crew-only areas at odd hours. Every little piece was another nail in the coffin. But here's the thing. While I was gathering all this, Elise started to change. She wasn't as confident as before. She'd come home a little quieter, sometimes paranoid, checking her phone constantly. She'd ask weird questions like, "Do you ever think people notice things about us?" It was almost funny. She had no idea I was the one pulling the strings, watching her paranoia grow like weeds in a garden. Meanwhile, the cracks in the sky's circle were showing. Through her messages, I saw panic spreading. Wives were starting to ask questions. Husbands were noticing inconsistencies. People were snapping at each other in the chats. Who told her? "This is getting dangerous. We need to be careful." I wasn't just exposing Elise. I was shaking the entire foundation of their twisted network. And I did it slowly, methodically, like loosening one bolt at a time until the whole engine falls apart. But I wasn't reckless. I knew if I pushed too hard, too fast, they'd figure it out. And if they figured it out, they'd close ranks. They'd protect each other. I couldn't let that happen. So I played dumb at home. I smiled, I cooked dinner, asked about her day. She cried in my arms once, saying she felt so stressed from work. I almost laughed at her face. Stressed? She was stressed because her house of cards was collapsing, and she didn't know the storm was me. One night, as I was reviewing the footage Mark slipped me, I saw her with a new pilot I didn't recognize. Tall guy, smug grin, carrying himself like he owned the place. I checked the logs. This wasn't a one-time encounter. He'd been in the picture for weeks. And the way he looked at her, it was different. Possessive. That's when I realized Elise wasn't just cheating for fun anymore. She was in deep, deeper than I thought. This guy wasn't just another fling. He was part of her world now. Maybe even a threat to me if things went sideways. And that's when my mission changed. It wasn't just about exposing them anymore. It was about protecting myself. Because if the sky circle figured out what I was doing, I wasn't sure how far they'd go to silence me. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was an executioner, sharpening my axe. By this point, I had more evidence than I knew what to do with. Audio clips, hotel records, GPS trails, screenshots of their disgusting little chats. But what's the point of having a loaded weapon if you never pull the trigger? So I decided to pull it. Carefully, quietly, one target at a time. The first strike was almost too easy. I printed out a few screenshots from Elise's group chat. Messages where one of her flight attendant friends bragged about meeting a married pilot during a Denver layover. I tucked the printouts into an unmarked envelope and mailed it straight to that pilot's wife. No return address. No note. Just the truth, plain as day. 2 weeks later, I saw the fallout in real time. Through Elise's phone, I watched as panic exploded in their chat. She found out. Ow! Who told her? This is bad. This is really bad. That pilot stopped showing up in the chats after that. His wife had apparently thrown him out, and he was too busy dealing with his own personal hurricane to worry about their little sex club. That was one bolt loosened. Next, I sent an anonymous email to the husband of another flight attendant. This one including audio of her laughing about getting away with everything because pilots make the best liars. The husband didn't respond to me, of course, but I didn't need him to. Within days, that flight attendant was blowing up the chat, accusing people of leaking things and saying her marriage was on the line. Another bolt loosened, and every time I struck, I watched the sky circle crumble a little more. They started turning on each other. Suspicion crept in. One person accused another of being careless. Another said, "We need to stop talking in here. This isn't safe anymore." Their once flawless machine of deception was breaking down piece by piece. Meanwhile, Elise was losing her shine. At home, she was jumpy, distracted. She'd check her phone constantly, like it was a lifeline. She'd leave the room to take calls, pacing, whispering. Her once cocky confidence was gone, replaced with paranoia. And I played the loving husband, cooking dinner, asking about her day, rubbing her shoulders when she sighed dramatically. She thought she was hiding the stress, but I knew exactly what was eating her alive. She started drinking more too. Wine at night, a shot of vodka before bed. She blamed it on work stress, but I knew better. She wasn't stressed about her job. She was stressed because her empire of lies was collapsing around her. The best part? She had no idea it was me pulling every string. But as satisfying as it was to watch the sky circle implode from the inside, I knew I couldn't stop yet. Not until every single one of them was exposed. Not until Elise was standing in the rubble of the world she built, realizing her own husband had been the one to tear it all down. So I kept going. I mailed another envelope, sent another anonymous tip. Each one was like a little firebomb, detonating in someone else's home. And every explosion sent shockwaves through the group. Marriages fell apart. Arguments erupted. Trust was gone. But with every strike, the tension grew. Because the sky's circle wasn't stupid. They knew someone was targeting them. They just didn't know who. And when you corner desperate people, especially ones with everything to lose, they start making mistakes. I could feel the pressure rising, like a plane cabin that suddenly loses oxygen. And I knew it was only a matter of time before Elise herself would start to suffocate. When airplanes crash, investigators look for the black box. It tells the story of what went wrong. Every beep, every warning, every final word is stored inside. By this point, I felt like I had my own black box on Elise. Every lie she told, every sneaky move, every laugh at my expense, I had it all recorded. And she didn't even know it. But here's the beautiful part. While I was calm, steady, and calculating, she was falling apart. Her paranoia was bleeding into her everyday life. At dinner, she stared off into space, chewing her lip raw. At night, she'd bolt upright, checking her phone in the dark. Sometimes I caught her pacing the kitchen at 2 a.m., whispering into the phone like a trapped animal. And then she started talking to me. "Babe," she said one evening, her voice shaking just a little. "You ever notice how some people get jealous? Like insanely jealous? Like they want to ruin other people's lives." I looked at her, keeping my face as blank as a freshly polished cockpit window. "What do you mean?" She sighed, rubbing her temples. "Some of the girls I work with, they're dealing with crazy stuff right now. Husbands finding out things. Accusations flying around. It's like someone's out to get us. Us. That word almost made me laugh out loud. Us. She thought she was venting to her safe, clueless husband, never realizing she was confessing to the very man dismantling her little empire bolt by bolt. I nodded slowly. "Weird. Must be stressful." "Yeah," she said quickly. Too quickly. "Super stressful." She gulped her wine. "I mean, not for me, obviously. But, people talk. Rumors spread. Lie after lie, layered like cheap perfume." And I just smiled. The cracks in her confidence were widening. At work, Mark told me she'd been called into HR twice in 1 month. Something about professional boundaries. Nothing formal. Not yet, but enough to rattle her. Her name was circulating. Whispers were starting. Meanwhile, in the Sky Circle chats, full-blown paranoia had set in. Someone's targeting us. This isn't random. Who's leaking? Who's the mole? The beauty of it all was that they had no idea where to point the finger. Every one of them was suspicious of the other. I didn't have to lift a finger to sow doubt. They were eating themselves alive. And Elise? She was caught in the middle. Her once flawless lies were starting to crumble. She'd come home with her makeup smeared, snapping at me over nothing, slamming doors, then apologizing seconds later. She was unraveling, and I was savoring every thread that came loose. But then came the moment that nearly broke my mask. One night, she curled up next to me, tears brimming in her eyes. "What if," she whispered, "what if my whole life came crashing down? What would you do?" I stared at her. For a split second, I almost told her, almost ripped the mask off, and showed her the mountain of evidence I'd built. But then I remembered, airplanes don't fall from the sky all at once. They break piece by piece until gravity does the rest. So I kissed her forehead and whispered, I'd still be here. She sobbed into my chest. And all I could think was, not for long. Because her black box was filling up with every secret, every lie, every betrayal. And soon, it would tell the whole world her story. Airplanes don't crash because of one mistake. They crash because of a chain reaction, one failure leading to another until the whole machine falls from the sky. And that's exactly what was happening to Elise. By now, the sky's circle was bleeding out. Families were imploding. Suspicion was everywhere. Their once tight little network was nothing but scattered chaos. And Elise, my perfect wife, was right in the middle of the wreckage. Mark kept feeding me updates from the inside. HR had called her in again. This time, it wasn't just a warning. There were formal complaints. Passengers had noticed overly friendly behavior on flights. Co-workers had reported inappropriate relationships with crew members. And while nothing had been proven yet, the smoke was thick enough to suggest fire. She came home that night pale, her usual mask on. She sat at the kitchen table, head in her hands, muttering, "They're trying to ruin me. Someone's trying to ruin my life." And I, the loving husband, set a cup of tea in front of her and said softly, "I'm sure it's just stress. It'll blow over." Inside, I was laughing, because the truth was, it wasn't just stress. It wasn't just gossip. It was the web of lies she had built finally strangling her. At work, she was unraveling. Her colleagues, people who once adored her, were starting to distance themselves. She told me one of her closest friends on the crew stopped answering her calls. Another rolled her eyes at her in the break room. And the pilots? They weren't protecting her anymore. They were too busy saving themselves. The sky circle was no longer a circle. It was a bunch of rats scrambling on a sinking ship. And Elise was left standing alone on the deck. She tried to overcompensate, dressing sharper, putting on extra makeup, smiling brighter, but only made her look desperate. Even passengers started noticing. Mark told me one woman had filed a customer feedback form describing Elise as distracted, flirty, and unprofessional. That form went straight to HR. Strike after strike after strike. At home, she was a storm. Some nights, she drank herself to sleep, mumbling about how everything's falling apart. Other nights, she snapped at me for leaving a dish in the sink or folding laundry the wrong way. It was almost too easy to play the calm, patient husband while she spiraled. And the more she leaned on me, the sweeter the revenge tasted. She thought I was her anchor, her safe place, her last piece of stability in a world that was collapsing. But really, I was the one pulling the ground out from under her feet. The climax came when she got pulled from a high-profile international flight. Paris, her favorite route. She had been bragging for years about how she was always chosen for that one, because the company trusts me. But not this time. Instead, she came home early, suitcase in hand, face blotchy from crying. "They're sidelining me," she said, her voice breaking. "They don't trust me anymore." I held her close, stroked her hair, whispered, "It'll be okay." But in my head, I thought, this is only the beginning. Because just like an airplane with a failing engine, once the first fire starts, it's only a matter of time before the whole damn thing goes down. And I was going to make sure she crashed hard. There's a moment in every flight where the captain decides, we're not going up. Too much risk, too much turbulence, too much failure in the system. They call it grounding the plane. That's exactly what I decided to do with my marriage. For months, I had played the perfect role. Supportive husband, patient listener, the anchor she thought she could hold on to while her world burned around her. But the truth? I was done playing. It was time to land this wreck for good. I sat at the kitchen table one Saturday morning with a folder in front of me. Inside that folder was her entire double life. Screenshots, audio recordings, hotel receipts, GPS trails, enough evidence to bury her 10 times over. She stumbled into the kitchen, hair messy, eyes red from another night of wine and fake tears. She poured herself coffee, sat down across from me, and looked up. "What's that?" she asked, eyeing the folder. "Sit down," I said flatly. Something in my tone froze her. She sat slowly, her hands trembling on the mug. I opened a folder and slid a photo across the table. Her, walking into a hotel with a pilot's arm around her waist. Security footage, courtesy of Mark. Her face went white. Elise, I said, my voice steady, I know. I've known for months. Every lie, every delayed flight, every time you said you were tired, I know. I have it all. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Tears filled her eyes. I didn't want to believe it at first. I continued. But then I saw the system. The sky's circle. The parties. The lies. And you weren't just part of it. You were running it. She shook her head, stammering. No, it's not. It's not what you think. Stop. I cut her off. Don't insult me with more lies. You had your fun. You thought I was clueless. But I'm not. And now it's over. I slid another paper across the table. Divorce papers. Already filled out. Already signed by me. Her eyes widened in shock. No. No, you can't. Please. She reached for my hand, but I pulled back. Elise, listen to me carefully. I'm not screaming. I'm not fighting. I'm not begging. Because unlike you, I don't need chaos to feel alive. I need peace. And you'll never give me that. She broke down, sobbing, begging, swearing she could change, swearing she could stop. But her words were empty. I had heard too many lies come out of her mouth to ever believe another. Finally, she tried the last weapon in her arsenal, anger. She stood, slammed her hands on the table, and shouted, "You'll regret this. You'll never find someone like me." I looked her dead in the eye and said, "That's the point." Silence. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift off my chest. I had taken back control. I packed my things that day and left. No big scene. No dramatic blowout. Just cold, clean separation. I had already made arrangements with a lawyer to ensure she didn't get a cent more than she deserved. And thanks to the evidence, I knew she'd never win if she tried to fight. As I walked out the door, she collapsed to the floor, sobbing my name. I didn't look back, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the fool. I was free. Every plane eventually runs out of altitude, and the sky circle had just hit theirs. After I filed for divorce and walked out of that house, their little system started collapsing on its own. The cracks I had made turned into full-blown explosions. Families crumbled. Careers fell apart. The lies they had hidden behind uniforms and flight schedules could no longer hold. Mark kept me updated from inside the airport. HR wasn't whispering anymore. They were investigating. Officially. Too many complaints. Too many suspicious overlaps in schedules. Too many hotel receipts that didn't match the flights. The airline couldn't ignore the smoke anymore, because behind it was fire. Elise was called in for a disciplinary hearing. Mark told me he saw her walking out of HR's office, pale, mascara smeared, looking like someone who'd been thrown out of a plane without a parachute. And then, one evening, she showed up at my doorstep, standing on the porch, shaking, her face streaked with tears. "They think I'm unprofessional," she whispered, her voice breaking. They're saying I can't be trusted." I stood in the doorway, calm as ever, and just nodded. No anger, no sympathy, just silence. The next day, the Betrayal bomb dropped. Mark sent me a link. Check the news. I opened it, and there it was, a leaked article about an airline investigation into inappropriate conduct among crew members. No names mentioned, but I didn't need names. I knew every single one of them by heart. The Sky Circle wasn't a secret anymore. Their group chat detonated. "This is your fault. You swore you deleted everything. Who's the rat? We're done." One by one, their lives unraveled. A pilot lost his job when his wife forwarded text to HR. A flight attendant resigned before she could be fired. Another tried to wipe everything, but it was too late. Screenshots were everywhere. And Elise? She became the face of it. The golden girl of the crew, the one everyone trusted, the one passengers adored. Now she was poison. Colleagues avoided her in hallways. Passengers whispered when they recognized her from gossip sites. HR suspended her pending further review. Her career was over. I'll never forget one evening when she cornered me outside my cafe, eyes swollen, voice trembling with desperation. "Did you do this? Tell me the truth." I looked her dead in the eyes, gave her the faintest smile, and said, "I didn't have to. You did it to yourself." That silence, the way she froze, realizing deep down it was true, was better than any screaming match. From that moment on, she was grounded. No flights, no crew, no fake delays to hide behind. Just her, alone with the wreckage she created. And me? I was already moving forward. Mark and I had signed the paperwork. Construction was underway. A cafe, right in the terminal. The same halls where she once strutted in her uniform, pretending to be queen of the skies, would now be the place where I thrived. And every time I imagined her walking past, without her uniform, without her reputation, without her future, I knew one thing. This was my final victory. The day my cafe opened, I stood behind the counter, the smell of fresh espresso filling the air, and I realized something. For the first time in years, I was free. No more lies. No more delayed flights. No more pretending everything was fine while my world crumbled behind my back. Just me, my coffee, and a future I had built with my own two hands. It wasn't easy getting there. Divorce papers, late nights, the endless feeling of betrayal. It weighed on me like a storm. But every storm passes. And when it does, the sky's clear. That's what my life felt like now. Clear skies. Elise? She disappeared from my radar. I heard through the grapevine that she lost her job permanently. The airline didn't want the scandal following them. Word spread fast. Passengers gossip. Employees gossip more. And soon her reputation was nothing but ashes. I don't know where she ended up, and honestly, I don't care. For years, I thought she defined me. I thought my role was to support her, to lift her up, to be her safety net. Turns out, she was the anchor dragging me down. Now, walking into my cafe every morning, seeing travelers smile as I hand them their drinks, hearing people laugh in a space I created, it's a reminder. A reminder that I wasn't destroyed by her betrayal. I was freed by it. And here's the funny thing. Some of the very flight attendants and mechanics who used to be part of her world now come through my cafe. They nod at me, order a drink, avoid eye contact. They know. They know I was the one who pulled the plug, the one who ended the sky circle. And every time I hand them their coffee, I smile. Because revenge doesn't always come in flames and shouting. Sometimes it comes in silence, in rebuilding yourself so strong that the people who try to break, you can only watch as you rise. That's the real revenge. Not destroying her, not humiliating her, but proving to myself that I was more than her lies. That I could take the worst betrayal imaginable and turn it into the start of something better. I'll be honest, if you had told me a year ago that I'd be running a cafe in an airport instead of fixing airplanes, I'd have laughed in your face. But life has a way of surprising you. And sometimes, the worst turbulence leads you to the smoothest skies. So, was I right to do what I did? To gather the evidence, to expose the sky circle, to walk away without a second glance? I think so, but I'll leave that up to you. If you've stayed with me through this whole ride, do me a favor. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Drop a like if you enjoyed hearing this, and tell me in the comments, did I do the right thing? And if you were in my shoes, what would you have done?